This is the Coaching Life Podcast. I should say, isolated socially Coaching Life Podcast. And I'm Chris Stewart, one of the hosts. And I have, through a Microsoft Teams meeting, my co-host, Pat Martin. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing very well. One of the great things, that's all I want to hear from you. So one of the blessings and positive things about all of the shutdowns right now is that everyone is available to come on your podcast to talk. And we got another special guest today. And this guest is really special to me because his name is Luke Steiner. Luke is one of our college ambassadors that I work with on a daily basis at Ohio University in the Scripps College of Communication. And I've got a story before we talk about Luke's background, what he's studying, and some of the things that he's doing. Here's why we're interviewing Luke today. I should say it's one of the reasons why. We'd probably have him on eventually anyway because he's going to be real successful out there in the sports world. Back during the holiday season, our ambassador team always has a holiday party, and we do a secret Santa gift exchange, and everyone picks a name, and we go on to, we have a spreadsheet where everyone kind of lists a few things that they're interested in because it's a real, basically we just give cheap gifts, $10 gifts or so, and everyone gets a chance to say, here are some things that I like. I like coffee, books, and Ohio University stuff or whatever. Well, one of the things that Luke put on his list that he wanted for Christmas, he said it was, I think, his dream to have this for Christmas this year, was to be on the Coaching Life Podcast. So you can say that we are fulfilling a young man's Christmas wish right now at this very moment, or his lifelong dream to be on the Coaching Life Podcast. Here we are, and we welcome you in on our show, Luke Steiner. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I mean, it was crazy how it happened because I know that I was working when it happened, and I saw the spreadsheet was up, and I was like, okay, I can't remember what the other two things I put, probably like Ohio University or like sports.
Yeah, they weren't nearly as important, Yeah, so
yeah, and I couldn't think of a third one, and I think it was the day that you record your podcast, and earlier in the day I saw you walk out, and I was like, you know what? Let's just put appearance on Chris's podcast. See if he would do it or you can see it. And I was like, okay, I'll have it up there for half an hour. If he sees it, I'll do it. And then it turned out literally within 5 minutes of me putting it on the spreadsheet, you saw it. And I was like, well, I can't back out now. I got to do it. So
I see how
and Abby
this goes now. I
were an
want to see
afterthought.
that sheet because if it says Chris's podcast, I'm going to be upset.
I don't remember what I put.
Luke, we've had this problem ever since me and Coach have developed this partnership. He always keeps putting his name first in everything.
No, come on.
I understand.
I mean,
you tell the people out there the truth, Pat. I try to put my name second.
Stretching the truth a little bit there.
So yeah, Luke, go ahead. You got something for him?
Well, I was just going to say, Luke, I think it's probably more of our pleasure to have you than your pleasure to join us on the podcast. But definitely appreciate you aspiring to join Coach Chris Stewart here and me and talking on the Coaching Life Podcast. And we like to incorporate as many different roles, I guess you could say, in the sports world as we can to the podcast. And we know that you are a journalist.
Yeah.
So we're bringing you on as a journalist to see how we can pick your brain and see maybe how you relate to our listeners out there. And I guess the first thing that we want to do, to start, people might be listening out there and thinking, what in the world are they bringing someone like this on the podcast for? But obviously, I think by the time we're done talking, the relevance will be very clear. But you're pursuing a degree in news and information. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Journalism, one of the two tracks, news and information, and the other track, strategic communication. News and information is more about the journalist giving the information to people, whereas strategic communication more public relations and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. And you're minoring in sports production.
Yep. It's one of the things I really pride myself on, because that minor has kind of gotten into a little bit of an opportunity with the athletic department at Ohio University. So I feel like that's one big thing that I can sell myself on, is the idea that I've worked in athletic department and I know how athletic departments really work. And that's one thing that a lot of people try to get into, is just college sports, because everyone likes college sports.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, you're looking to get your master's degree in sports administration. Could you tell us what kind of future career and endeavors you're looking to pursue with those degrees?
So originally, I like to start off where I began, because I realized that I didn't have a very good chance to play college sports. So I knew at one point I wanted to be in sports. I've loved sports. I've played sports my whole life, and I wanted to find a way to keep sports as part of my life. So I kind of took the transition from playing to journalism my junior year of high school, when I got a part-time position at a local radio station, which thank God I got that. That's really kind of how my whole journalism career started. And I've really kind of changed my look. As you said, the master's degree in sports administration, I've kind of loved to get in the behind the scenes in front of the camera or in front of the microphone and talking. I like to get behind the scenes now. And this idea of sports administration is more the marketing side of a sports organization, because when I've talked to a couple of people in the professional sports scene, especially from the sports administration side, it seems like some sports organizations have this gap where the marketing team and the media team work separately, and they don't work together enough, because there isn't a sports business professional that understands both sides. So I feel like there's this gap in the sports world that I feel like I could fulfill, because I understand both sides of it. And it would give me the opportunity with that master's degree and with my bachelor's degree in news and information, that there's not enough individuals that understand both sides and why each side can benefit each other. I know that's one thing that I really talked to my mentor about, how there's this gap that you can fulfill just because you understand both, and you can give the dumbed down reason for the media to the business people and the dumbed down business stuff to the media people. So it's more of an idea that there's an opportunity that many people may not see. And once that opportunity is fulfilled, a sports organization as a whole is more likely to operate well, because I know that my mentor, Preston McClellan, who works for the PGA, he actually pitched his own position. And since he got his new position, I can't remember what the title of it is right now, but he and the PGA has turned in one of the highest growths for media and marketing in the past 2 years. So I feel like once you understand both sides of it, your team works so much better.
Yeah, no doubt. I think right now, Luke, we're in a time where those kinds of creative ideas are going to be extremely relevant and extremely helpful. Did you see a lot of sports broadcasters are doing this, and Russ Eisenstein from Ohio University, the play-by-play voice of the Ohio Bobcats, put out on Twitter that he would do play-by-play for anyone's sports highlight, just their random backyard sports highlight, if they just sent it to him. And I've watched a few of those. Have you seen any of those, Pat, that he did?
I haven't. I just saw that he would do it. I haven't seen any follow-up videos.
But I mean, imagine that, a sports broadcaster. I know, Luke, you and I have talked about this before. A sports broadcaster coming on and doing a play-by-play of something random for a business, a local restaurant or something like that. Is that the kind of thing that you're thinking of, that we've got to think outside the box and do those kinds of things? There's a lot more possibilities out there to utilize business-wise.
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. I know that specifically I watched a couple of those from Russ, and I know Joe Buck has been doing a couple of them as well. And it's a thing that, one, it fulfills, quote unquote, the sports that we are missing out on right now. And I know that's one big thing that sports fans are missing, is the sports. And two, I mean, good for Russ, because Russ is sharpening his skills as well, because he's doing things that he may not be used to be doing. And it's this opportunity of collaboration with people and with a company. Say Kaiser's Barbecue sponsors a video that Russ does. It gives an opportunity for Kaiser's Barbecue to get their name out there if they're making a barbecue sandwich or whatever. And it shows you what Kaiser's Barbecue is doing. It helps Russ out, and it gives both of these people, the Ohio Athletic Department and Russ and Kaiser's Barbecue, the opportunity to be seen on social media by a group of members that they've never seen it before. That's one big thing that I feel like one thing that's missing out in sports business is that it's not our own fault. It's just the way our human beings are. We like to see the things that we like to see. Obviously, when you follow certain things on Twitter, when you follow certain things on Facebook or Instagram, you will see those every single time. But if there is a group that collaborates with, say it is the Chicago White Sox, say it is the Cleveland Indians that you're a fan of, but you don't know that this group is a thing, it gives you the opportunity to see that group, and that group may see growth because there's new people that are seeing their opportunities that they offer to people. And that's one thing I feel like, especially now in this time, is really happening in the sports world with social media, because all sports teams are really just trying to like open the pages up and what can we possibly do to entertain our fans right now. Yeah. And that's one thing that I've seen a lot with, I know Ohio Bobcats did the Wallpaper Wednesday thing yesterday, where they had the opportunity for you to put your last name and a number on a basketball jersey and a football jersey. That's genius.
Yes, it
because
is.
You're getting crowd interaction on social media, and they're getting something that they would like. They could put on Instagram, they could put on Facebook, and now the Ohio Bobcats brand is being given to other people that may have not seen it before.
And there's no reason why this stuff should cease once we're back to normal life, right? I mean, these are just creative ideas that we're tapping into parts of people's brains right now that we just weren't hitting before. And it's all because of basically an obstacle that has been dropped in our way. And like Ryan Holiday says in his book of the same title, sometimes the obstacle is the very way to get to something even greater in life. And I think in many ways, this COVID-19, coronavirus threat is actually going to provide us with, granted, while it is devastating in so many ways, it's going to provide a lot of blessings as well on the other side of it.
I know the White Sox, because me being a White Sox fan, I follow all of their social media and that type of stuff. They put a word search on Facebook that you can print off and do. That's genius.
Yeah.
Because I didn't look through all the words because I didn't print it out, but most of them were last names of players. One, you get the opportunity to put your eyes on a player's name that may be new to the team that you've never seen before as a fan. Two, it gives you something to do in this whole thing. And three, it's an opportunity for the White Sox to give a different look on their team and their media by giving a word search. Like, who'd have thought that, 3 weeks ago, the White Sox would have released a word search for you to do with their team names in the middle of spring training. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that. Right. Not at all.
Yeah.
I could see something like this too having a big impact on recruitment capabilities, because it's just another, the digital world is a part of our life now. It's an extension, to the real world, I would say. And it, Coach, we've talked before about, how people make decisions on what college they're going to attend. Mm-hmm. And, the media presence of an entity impacts the perception that people have of that entity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this media relationship could have an impact on, from a college perspective, who attends colleges, but who want, a part of that would be who wants to play, on certain teams. And then I would say that would even reach further up into professional sports too, where, because professional athletes are always talking about the fan bases and the environment and, the history of the organization that they're joining as some of the reasons that they're, we all know that, the bottom dollar is very important, but they list these things as some of the reasons that they are interested in, like going to the Yankees or something like that. And
they exist like as professionals just because there is a fan base. If there was no fans, they would not be professionals at what they do. They wouldn't be paid for it. You know what I'm saying?
True.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point. Great point. So ultimately, this type of thing is having an impact on, the rosters of teams It's having a strategic impact on how good these teams are, or it could, I should say.
I agree. I mean, when we've already seen by looking just on what TV stations put on TV and what ESPN is showing, and everything, whether it's media or sports business, is changing. In my opinion, we're going to see almost every single aspect of our life change in some way because of this, because we realize whether it's the ease of working from home, whether it's the ease of going to the grocery store because you can order it online and they'll bring it out to your car, that sort of thing. It's just, I feel that we're really going to see all the things that we've already had at our disposal that we haven't been using be used so much more, and our whole life is going to change because of what's been happening. And there's no way it's not going to change sports with teams and with recruiting and with how people pick their colleges and stuff. I know that some players, like especially when you get towards the high tier players, more high tier players may commit to a team that has a better media team because it may allow them to build a better social media presence. I know that's one thing that our athletic department's trying to do, is kind of give the opportunity to the players to build a presence, because once again, like I've already kind of talked about, the players are giving your brand a different look because they obviously have people that are following them that may not follow you as a brand.
That's great stuff there. Yeah.
You know, speaking of things that are changing and things that we've had to do differently, college is one of those things. And Luke, you're finishing up your senior year of college at home during this time of social distancing. And what kind of adjustments have you had to make, you know, and how are you handling all of this? You know, I'm sure that your faculty members and professors have had to make some extreme adjustments, and you as students, especially since you are, you know, you being a senior, most of your coursework is, you know, really requires hands-on labs, getting behind the camera, production equipment, things like that. So what's it look like for you, I guess, academically, but just also personally, you know, how are you handling it?
I mean, it's been real weird, obviously, because I know I've talked to my roommates, my friends, and it's just the feeling of not being able to go. Like, I live in a house with 3 apartments, and the feeling of me not being able to go down the stairs to the bottom apartment to hang out with my friends is just weird.
Yeah.
Like, there's no opportunity to do that. Like, I know that obviously I've been hanging out with my family and my brother and my parents and that type of stuff, but it's still weird that I can't go down the stairs and turn left, and then I know that there's going to be 2 of my friends in the living room watching TV. Like, it's just a weird feeling that I can't really do that. And like, the biggest change for me, especially, not necessarily academically, because most of my classes were very independent besides my capstone and that sort of stuff. Like you said, the hands-on classes, most of them were independent. So I would kind of worked by myself anyway. There's like, class was basically just a lecture going over what we would read in the book or what would be on the PowerPoint that the professor would give us before anyway. So the biggest change for me has really been the time change, because I'm from Illinois,
that's right,
which is 5.5 hours away from Athens, and we're in Central Time.
Right.
So it's 10:55 here right now, where it's 11:55 in Ohio. And that's one big thing I really had to get used to, is because I know, like, due times, like due dates, all my classes usually have stuff that's due at 11:59, but it's due at 10:59. So now I have to do it earlier. And now I have to make sure that I get it done at an earlier time, because I have to remember that time change. And I know that the first week of class, of online class, we had a personal meeting with my sports management professor for my event facility class, and I almost missed it because I forgot that my email was in Eastern time. So I think it was set for like 11:30 or 12:30, but I forgot that the hour with difference was there, and I almost missed it. But luckily I got the notification that was like, oh, your meeting is in 5 minutes, and I had to sprint upstairs to my room and get my laptop ready, and luckily I made it. But it's one thing I've really had to adjust to, because I would have never thought realistically about the time change, because that's one thing that you never really think of. It's like, oh yeah, it's the time, whatever.
Yeah.
Not that big of a deal. But for me, I mean, if it's 11:56 in Athens and I have something due at noon, it's obviously tough for me, because I'll think, oh, noon, that's not that big of a deal. I have another hour to do it, but I have 4 minutes to do it. That type of thing.
That is pretty wild.
And I know that's one problem, that I have a couple of friends that live in California, so they have an even a bigger time change than I do. So That's 3 hours, 3 hours difference from Athens. So I know that's one thing. And then I'm sure the international students are having a little bit of an issue with it as well, because obviously international time could be 5 to 10 hours difference or whatever it may be.
Right. Speaking of international, you were actually in Manchester, England on your spring break while all of this breakout took place, while everything was really going down here in the United States. A couple of things. One, I guess, tell us a little bit about that experience of getting back here and how maybe your spring break was cut a little short or something. But also, we'd just like to hear in general what you were doing over there. I know that you had mentioned to me before you went that you were potentially going to try to get to a United game, but also, you would said that you would have some interaction with some sports figures, and we'd just like to hear some of the differences that you encountered, maybe some of the experiences that you had while you were there.
Yeah, luckily our spring break didn't get cut short.
Good.
Which was a good positive, because it was just the spring break trip. We were over spring break, obviously. We left the Friday, so I think that was the 8th. And then we got back the 15th, which was the Sunday. So it was nice that we had like a whole week there. So the original idea of what we were going to do is it's a study abroad course through the the Office of Global Opportunities. And it's called Language, Culture, and Sport. And it's more about how the first half of the semester was more about how the culture is different with the United Kingdom. And then the second half of the semester was going to be about how sports is a lot different. And I feel that our trip over there really got us everything, because we experienced like museums. We went to a tea room. We had afternoon tea. I mean, anything you could possibly think of in the United Kingdom, we probably did it at some point. Luckily, like I said, our trip didn't get cut short, but I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember what day everything started happening in the United States, but the time change is a big problem in Manchester too, because it's 5 hours difference from Eastern time. So everything that we were trying to figure out about the United States was 5 hours ahead. So when stuff came out at the end of the business day, it would be 10 p.m. in Manchester. So it was a very weird idea, because we couldn't really do anything, because once we found out information, it was already 10:30 at night. It's not like we can go, call someone, change our flight type thing. Luckily, we didn't have to do any of that. But I believe it was either Tuesday or Wednesday was when the travel ban for the mainland of Europe came out. And it was an idea that we were like, are we going to be able to get home? Like, this is really advanced a lot farther than we thought it would during our time in Manchester, and even during the time of what we thought would happen with the whole COVID-19. And luckily, we had an advisor who was through our company that booked the trip, called CIS Abroad, and he was in contact completely at all times with CIS Abroad in the United States, as well as a member of the U.S. Embassy, which was in London. So we were always in contact, getting updates of what was going to happen, which was a very good thing, because we found things out before it usually got announced, which was great, because we could make adjustments a lot quicker before people would be calling airlines to switch flights, that sort of thing. But the biggest problem for me was that on my way back, I was supposed to go from Manchester International Airport to Copenhagen, then to Chicago. And the travel bans happened, and Denmark was part of it. And I was like, what am I going to do here? Am I going to be able to get from Copenhagen to Chicago type thing? And I called my airline and I was like, hey, is this still going to be a possible thing? Like, is this flight even happening? And they're like, yeah, as of now, we are still going to have the flight, because United States citizens can get back no matter what. And I was like, okay, that's good. Like, I can get back no matter what. Obviously, that's a positive. And I was like, okay, just if you could give me an update, give me an update. And then within 2 hours, they told me the flight had been canceled, because 85% of the flight couldn't make it to the United States, because they were all people that were not United States citizens. And I was like, now I'm stuck in Manchester. What am I going to do? And it was, luckily, that was like Thursday morning in Manchester, and it was probably 6 a.m. in the United States. So I texted my mom and I was like, hey, this happened. What are we going to do? And she luckily was off that day. So she was able to call United, my airline, and sat on hold for 4 hours for my flight to get changed, which was nice because then I went from Manchester International to Newark, New Jersey to Chicago. And that day, when I got my flight changed, was when all of the colleges started canceling and all of the things started happening. And of course, we were excited about that because we got another week of spring break. We were like, okay, we can do things at home, whatever. And luckily, I was already flying back to Chicago, so I didn't have to drive from Athens back to my hometown in Danville, so that I didn't have that. I mean, it was just nice because I could drive straight back from Chicago because of how I planned my planned the break before. And we got back luckily, but there's all these hoops we had to jump through because we were like, oh, okay, like we're going to get questioned obviously because we've been international. We might get quarantined for a day once we get back to our airport or whatever. And it was like, what are we going to do? Because it wasn't completely official what was going to happen. And luckily nothing happened of that. Like we weren't stuck in an airport. None of that happened. I know you could tell that people were watching you a little bit more because that's one thing that we were told by the U.S. Embassy was be prepared for people to watch you to see if you have a respiratory distress or if you're coughing or if you just look sick. And I was like, okay, that makes sense logically. And luckily I didn't. And then went through customs smoothly, which was nice, and got back into the country very, very easily. And then it was very weird because whenever I've been in most airports, obviously they're busy. There's obviously a ton of flights going out. All those flights are almost completely full. And Manchester was the same way because the United Kingdom really wasn't reacting very much to the coronavirus at the time. So it just felt like a normal airport. But then when I got to Newark, there was nobody. I mean, like deserted. It was very, very weird because you felt alone. Obviously I was by myself, so I knew I'd be alone, but you just felt like you were the only person in the place. And when I flew from Newark to Chicago, I think there was probably 40 people on the flight, maybe.
Wow.
I mean, there was just nobody.
It's a very rare feeling at an airport and on a flight, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like I like to sit in the emergency aisles because being 6'3", it's obviously nice because there's a little extra leg room. Mm-hmm. I was the only person in all of the 4 emergency aisles.
Spread out.
I was the only person.
Use them all.
I did get to spread out and like lay down, but it felt weird that like if anything did happen, I'm the only person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a very weird feeling about the whole thing once everything started changing because there's all these thoughts that are going to go through your head. And are we going to get home? Are we going to have to stay here for a couple of days? Are we going to have to stay in some airport or some hotel for a week to be quarantined? And
and it's just weird.
It is.
This was happening at the same time that Coach, me and you were sitting in the studio on campus thinking, man, it's kind of
we were going
quiet around here.
What's going on? Yeah. We were sitting there saying, look at how much has changed since the last time we talked. Well, it's gotten even worse now.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, let's talk some sports. Are you guys okay with that?
Absolutely.
I'm okay with that.
Definitely.
What sports did you play while growing up, Luke, in high school or as a youth?
So growing up, it was whatever I could possibly do. I know that my family especially did a great job of getting me involved with everything. So probably from when I was like first grade to definitely at least 5th or 6th grade, it was football in the fall, basketball in the winter, golf and baseball in the spring, no matter what. I was always doing something, which was nice because obviously just doing something's good for a younger kid. And I felt that was always a good thing for me. And I always played with the same people. So I always played football with the same group of probably 25 to 30 kids. And then basketball was with the same 7 to 10 kids. Baseball was a little more spread out because there was a lot more teams. And then golf was always, I did a golf camp every summer where it was a week and you would do like driving was one day and like the basics of golf. And there was one thing that we always tried to do as a family was we would try to go golf, whether it was one day a week or do something to just stay active for us. Because I know a lot of summer camps, I mean, we did anything you could possibly think of that a little kid would do. I probably did at some point.
Got 2 follow-ups to that answer. Which of those 4 sports was number 1, your favorite to play? And number 2, which one were you the best at?
It's a good question. I know Chris knows what I look like. I'm a 6'3" kid that's super skinny. But when I was a little kid, I was one of the smallest. So football really wasn't a big sport for me because I was smaller. I played like I was decent, I'd like to think, but definitely wasn't the best sport I was at, and it definitely wasn't my favorite. I mean, I liked hitting people, but I mean, I didn't like getting hurt. So I mean, that was definitely not the favorite. Basketball was probably the sport that was my favorite at the time because my older brother and my half brother, who is 12 years older than me, was very good at basketball in high school. And then he actually went and played college basketball for a couple of seasons. So I felt like that was definitely my favorite because I always found time, whether it was in the backyard or whether we would go to the high school gym and just shoot around. I always thought that was so much fun. That was definitely probably my favorite. Baseball was probably the one I was the best at. I don't know. It just came a little natural to me. I'm not sure why. I mean, I couldn't put words to why I felt that I was the best at baseball. I mean, maybe it's because I know I took lessons for a little bit when I was younger, and I know that that's probably part of it, but I felt like just because there were so many friends around me and playing against friends on the other team made me better. The competition, because I know the other sports I played with them on the same team, and obviously you have competition against each other in practice and that sort of thing. But I felt that whether it was playing against my best friend who was pitching on the opposite side, maybe that made me a little bit better. I don't know if that could be part of it because when I was younger, especially loved competition. No matter what, I wanted to get into competition. And I think that was definitely a big part of baseball. And I felt like maybe because I liked to run when I was younger. Now I don't know how I did that, but I liked to run when I was younger. And I felt like maybe running with the bases was very fun. So I felt like I trained a little bit more for baseball. I couldn't put words to it really, but I felt like that was the best one. And then golf was just kind of another thing to do during the summer because obviously without school.
Well, you said when you were in Manchester, you said that one of the experiences that you guys were hoping to achieve when you were there was to discover some of the biggest differences in the way they handle sports there from the way we handle sports here in the United States of America. You played 4 sports here in the United States, and when you went to that trip, did you discover? I mean, what would you say? I mean, was that goal achieved? I mean, what would you say were some of the differences that you learned from the people there when you guys talk sports?
It is soccer galore. That's like the only sport they play.
Well, you're going to be.
It seems
if you're going to talk soccer here for the next 20 minutes, you're going to sound like Charlie Brown's teacher to me because I don't understand anything about soccer. We do have some soccer listeners, though. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's soccer galore. We obviously knew that because of the English Premier League, and Manchester obviously has Manchester City and Manchester United. We knew that soccer was obviously going to be the biggest sport, or obviously football is what they call it. Yeah. And I could easily you could see it. Not even like watching soccer games and watching that some people may be better at this certain age in England, whether than they would be in the United States. You could just see it. On our drive from the airport into the city, I'd say it was a 25-minute drive. I saw 7 or 8 soccer complexes. 7, probably even more. And it was a matter of, I know that our professor, who was originally from Manchester, that's his hometown, so he had a little bit of a connection to each complex. And when you looked at each complex, he would point it out and be like, oh, this is where so-and-so played before they became part of the 14U club for Manchester United. This is where so-and-so played before they were found by Manchester City. And like, it just kept on going. And it was very obvious that that's basically what all the kids do is play soccer.
Yeah. And
when you looked at the talent level, obviously I wasn't very big into soccer. And when I was a little kid, obviously I watch it like when it's on TV, whether it's the MLS and stuff. But when you look at the MLS and the English Premier League, it's a completely different ballgame. It's the talent level. Like it's obviously less at MLS and the English Premier League. But if you put a 12-year-old at the United States and a 12-year-old from the United Kingdom against each other, the United Kingdom player is worlds better. Just the competition is so much better in Manchester and the United Kingdom for soccer. It's a little absurd because just how good people get, how early. I mean, when you look at the teams, there's kids that, like, I know Phil Foden, who plays for Manchester City. He's from England. I couldn't tell you his age right now, but there's no way he's above 21 and he's starting. And it's like, that's not a rare thing. It's usually one team has at least one person that's below 21 years old that starts consistently every single game for them.
I was going to say, Luke, could you speak to, because what you said there was that Manchester United, which is a professional soccer club, a professional soccer organization, they have sponsored youth teams, right? That's kind of in their program that they're using as like a sort of a farm system. Yeah. And I think, people, a lot of our listeners probably wouldn't pick up on that. Could you talk about, so there's a difference there, obviously, right away about how, professional soccer in England handles their youth interaction. Immediately we see that. Could you talk a little bit about anything that you noticed while you were over there in regards to that, of how the difference between the way they were handling youth sports, with aspirations of playing at a professional level compared to what, you've experienced here in the States?
It's still very similar. So it's very similar to the travel ball and the AAU system, where you still go to school, and then it's an out of school thing that's not sponsored by your elementary school or anything like that. And that the professional clubs sponsor the team that you're playing for. But once you get to, I couldn't tell you a specific age. Obviously, that's for the younger age, like 12U, 13U, 14U, all those ages. And then I believe when you get up to 16U is when you could possibly play for a team that is like actually sponsored by Manchester United. So I know that when you're a 16-year-old soccer player, obviously extremely good, and Manchester United comes up to you, hey, we want you to play for our 16U club. You basically become a professional athlete at 16 years old. You go to their training facility, you live there, you train with them, and then they school you there as well. So it's not like you aren't getting any education. That's one big thing that they try to emphasize, is that they're still getting an education. All these kids are still getting an education while they're playing. And I know when
is it like the IMG Academy here in the States? Is that similar to what IMG does?
Very similar, yes. But obviously IMG, not a professional team.
Right, not affiliated with anyone. Right.
Yeah, it's like almost each team has a quote unquote IMG Academy attached to it. That's a very good way to explain it. Actually.
Yeah, that is different.
When we were with Manchester United, we did our stadium tour, and then we did an educational session with a guy named Matt Cross. And Matt Cross is a guy you can Google. He actually played in the English Premier League at one point. I believe it was for 3 seasons as a defender. And that was when we really got an opportunity to talk about the differences in sports, whether it may be sports business or whether it may be the youth aspect of it. And what he does for Manchester United, I can't remember what his title is, but he does educational sessions, and then he works with the younger clubs basically as a counselor to make sure the kids are going to class. And it's crazy because I know, say an 18U player gets called up to the A team in Manchester United, he is a sub, he can play for them. They miss class. He has to go to their coach and say, hey, this kid can't play because he missed class. And it's like, it's really crazy how things develop over there, because it's also very sport driven, but behind it, when you don't really see it, unless you ask questions, it's very, very, very education driven, so that everyone still gets their education.
I have a friend in England that I've talked to about the difference, the system, and between how people in England perceive sports much differently than people in the United States do. And I was just wondering if you were able to witness or experience any type of difference between the way parents, United Kingdom parents, approach youth soccer in comparison to the way, say, parents over here in the United States approach youth baseball or youth basketball or something like that.
So it's kind of crazy, because I know we didn't obviously didn't get to see any youth sports matches or anything like that. But from what we learned from what Matt told us, the parents are not involved at all.
Yeah.
Like they still obviously come to the matches and they watch the matches. They hang out with the kids and that sort of thing, but they're not involved at all. They can't. They won't allow it. Because
what'd you say there, Coach?
I just kind of chimed in and said, well, there's a difference.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was told as well, that the parents are not involved. They're not, and it's just different. They perceive it different, and they approach it different. And, they remain a parent to the athlete. They don't try to force their soccer career in any way. So I was wondering about that.
I wonder if there's any correlation.
I know that. What'd you say, Chris?
I was just going to say, I wonder if there's any correlation to that point and the fact that these kids at a young age are so good at their game.
Yeah,
I definitely think there is. I feel that there's no way there's not a correlation at some point. Obviously, there's some that probably are better because of certain things, but obviously, there's got to be a correlation. It's so successful and so consistently successful when the parents are not involved for them. There's no way there isn't one.
Well, let me say this. I've been told that in England, kids go out and play soccer all the time in a unorganized environment.
Unstructured free play.
Yeah. I know that when we on that drive from the airport into the city, you could see at these sports complexes, and then there's obviously public parks. And then at the public parks, there's literally just kids doing anything they can possibly think of with the soccer ball, whether it's practicing dribbling, whether it's practicing shots, whether it's practicing new tricks, that sort of thing. And it's just a matter of like, these kids go out and play soccer. And we miss it now in the United States because all kids aren't really going out to other people's backyards and playing wiffle ball. Like I know that's something I still did as a kid and saw it go away kind of. And when we were in Manchester, you would see kids dribbling soccer balls down the sidewalk to get to the sports complex because they're so committed that they wanted to go do something there.
And their parents are walking behind them, right?
Yeah, there's some that I know that a couple have like older siblings that we're going with and like that sort of thing. And there's some that really the parents not involved at all.
Pat, you're being a smart aleck.
Answer that I wanted.
Yeah,
they're walking behind them, coaching them up, telling them what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and that's my thing is because kids in the United States, there's this isn't a blanket statement. I mean, I know there's exceptions, but the mentality in the United States is parents take kids to play sports. So a kid isn't going to go play sports if their parent is involved because everything that they know, everything that they've been taught is, well, this is something that my parent or my guardian takes me to do or is around when I'm doing. Right? We're taking that the ownership of youth sports away from our kids.
The hobby
in the United States.
The hobby aspect of it. We've completely removed that from kids.
Yeah, and I feel just we've said it already here. The difference between a 12-year-old in England playing soccer and a 12-year-old in the United States playing soccer is that 12-year-old in England has played a lot more fun soccer than the 12-year-old in the United States.
Spontaneous, fun, pickup.
There has to be a correlation.
In addition to their instruction that they're getting from their coaches.
Yes.
Luke, when you think of coaches that you've had, you're still young, and so you're not that far removed from playing as a youth. What are some of the biggest impacts? And you can, either positive or negative, because we're here to help. But if you have any stories like that you can remember, is there any particular coach or coaches maybe that you have had during your days playing youth ball, rec ball, travel ball, high school ball, etc., that really left an imprint on you in some way?
So luckily, one positive thing is I really never had a negative experience from coaches, especially whether they're like negative impact on me. I've had coaches that were definitely in over their head and a little bit, just over their head. They didn't understand all of it. But there's two coaches that come to mind immediately. my high school baseball coach, Coach Mark Dodd, and then my youth football coach, Coach Chris Yates. And Chris was obviously, his son was the same age as me, Brandon, and that's the main way that he sort of the coach, like he was Brandon's dad, but he was our coach. There was two separate Chris's. Mm-hmm. There was Coach Chris and then there was Dad Chris. And it was a little crazy because they were very similar but very different. And I know that one thing that Chris really wanted to do as a coach, as more and more I've talked to him, since obviously not being his player anymore and being out of football and him not coaching anymore, that he really just wanted to be someone that people can look up to. And it's very cliche. It's very normal. I feel that sometimes that you hear from coaches, but he was literally like my third father figure. Yeah. Because I know that he is this guy that we can look up to. He obviously knows the sport because he is our coach, and he's always this person that you can go to no matter what. I still go to Chris, whether it's a text or a call, or even I just see him at the grocery store. I'm willing to talk to him about absolutely anything. And it's one positive that I've found always in my coaches, that I've always felt comfortable to go talk to them. And I feel like that sometimes you don't get that with coaches. Sometimes coaches are just overbearing. You don't really feel that you can go talk to them and that sort of thing. And I felt that with Chris, you could do anything. And there's always a learning aspect for it, because he always, whether you missed a tackle or whether you missed an assignment, he always somehow developed a learning way to make a positive impact as you as a player and you as a person. And I felt that was always one positive for the greatest thing about him as a coach. Yes, he obviously knew the sport. We won a lot of football games with him as a coach, but he as a person was just a phenomenal coach because of the way that he taught you how to do things properly as a person, let alone a football player.
Yeah, I get that.
That's an amazing answer. And you hear so many times when people talk favorably of a coach that they've had in their lives, they always mention how good of a strategic, technical skill instructor the coaches are at the end, after they talk about how they meant to him as a person.
It's the last thing they say. Yeah.
It's the last thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had coaches on some of my staffs that really didn't have a lot of that technique, instruction, ability, but man, they were really good people. And I know that they've left an extremely lasting mark on their players as well. And
that's a perfect transition for me, because with my high school baseball coach, Coach Mark Dodd, he was the same way as, like you said, he didn't have too much. Yes, he obviously knew the sport of baseball, but he didn't have too much technical in baseball, because by trade, I guarantee he's a football coach. I mean, he coached football for...
Yeah, you have that a lot in high school, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's coached football for probably 15 years, definitely over 10, probably like in between 12 and 15 years at my high school in Bismarck. And you could tell that when it came to baseball, he obviously had some technical knowledge, but he deferred to the assistant coaches that had more technical knowledge about hitting, about pitching and that sort of thing. And he was the leader. And like you said, he just was so charismatic and just so a great person that you could always go talk to.
That's such a good word for coaches out there that are listening to understand that, I wouldn't say young coaches, because I've been coaching for over 20 years in some fashion. And I would say it's just been over the last few that I've really started to understand how important the person is as opposed to the player. And it's just, you can't speak on the levels of how important it is for a coach to understand that you have to develop and nurture a relationship with your players, or you're really not going to accomplish much as a coach.
And we never want to downplay the importance of knowing the game and knowing how to instruct and how to be a good teacher and having, keep staying on top of all the things that you need to, because, everybody's out there to win. And if you can't coach, then if you're just a good guy and you're a good father figure, you really shouldn't coach. You should do something else. You should mentor people. So we don't want to downplay that, but we do want to, I guess, iterate over and over and over again that the ratio of, coaching the person versus being able to coach the game is so much higher. You've got to focus even more on the person than you do the game.
Yeah, I think, Coach, what I would say is don't even separate them at all. You know, it's not how good are you at coaching the game and how good of you are at coaching the person, but coaching the game is actually a part of coaching the person. It's a smaller part. It's a big part, but it's a smaller part of coaching the person. You have to be able to have a little bit of knowledge, because that, you know, that's how trust and respect is developed to a certain level. So if you don't have it, you're going to, some kids are going to check out, because they'll just tell you right off, hey, I'm not here to be, you know, to have a father figure. They'll think about it later, 20 years down the road. But, you know, so there's a lot of kids that are like, hey, just tell them I want to get better. I'm here to win, you know? And so not every player needs a father figure, right? But that's part of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of nurturing that relationship and understanding what that person needs out of you.
Yeah.
So
there's one situation that really sticks out to me for both of those, is that I don't remember like what game or anything like that. Coach Dodd came up to us as a group, and it might have actually just been a practice. And he asked us, what do you feel is the most important pitch in baseball? And of course we were like, obviously like, oh, fastball, changeup, for different reasons. And he was like, no, none of those. It's the next pitch.
Wow,
and we were like,
excellent. Yeah.
And I was like, of course, that's a coach's answer, obviously. and I was like, okay, obviously, yeah, you can put something behind you, obviously the good reasons. And then he pulled us to the side after practice, because that was a before practice thing. And then after practice, he was like, so obviously what I talked about is very, very true. The next pitch, you can put things behind you, make an adjustment, those sort of things. But think about it as a personal standpoint. From a personal standpoint, in any different situation, you make a mistake, you're going to be able to learn from it to make you better as a person and make your team or your group, whoever it may be, better as a group and be more successful in a job, in a classroom, in anything. And it was just one of those things that always stuck with me and probably always will.
Yeah, it speaks to the response, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you going to respond to what just happened or what is happening? I think it's very valid.
Well, Pat, you want to ask Luke our magic question to end all interviews?
The $500 question.
That's right.
Luke, every guest that we have on, we ask the same question. Luke, what's your favorite memory or story from your days of playing youth sports?
I could go on for hours about this. I guarantee it. There's two that immediately come to mind. So favorite memory from just like a game aspect is my junior year of high school. So my first 2 years of high school, my freshman and sophomore year, I went to a small private school with under 100 kids, and obviously went to school there. My brother graduated because he's 2 years older than I am. And once he graduated, I made the decision to transfer to the public school that is in our school district, Bismarck. So I know that obviously those are my final 2 years, and that's where I met Coach Dodd. And it's my junior year. We know, I guarantee both of you know that high school baseball, the first month, it could be 32 degrees. It could be 75 degrees. You absolutely have no idea what's going to happen. And we have this game scheduled against one of our big rivals, probably the second best team in our conference, very, very similar to what we are, and Georgetown. And it's this game. It's scheduled to snow. It's going to be 30 degrees. We're like, oh, there's no chance we're going to play this. We still play. The second inning, I can't remember. I was playing third. It starts snowing. We have to stop for a snow delay for 15 minutes because it's blizzard. You can't see anything.
Yeah, baseball in the Midwest.
And of course, we're baseball in the Midwest, and we're like in the locker room, like, what are we doing? Why are we playing this game? And it was like, okay, we're going to continue. And it's this back and forth game the whole time. I think it was 2-0. Our ace was on the mound, Dylan, who actually, kind of funny story, tangent. I can get on to another part about that. He struck out 15 of Ohio's batters when he pitched for SEMO this about 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
so
Southeast Missouri?
Different one. Yep, Southeast Missouri. Yeah. And he's pitching, and he's at that was the year that Illinois instituted the pitch count. And that was the first year. And he reached the 105 limit in the bottom of the seventh. The top of the seventh inning. We're at home. We're winning. It's 2-0 or 2-1. and there's a runner on first. So we had to bring in our relief guy from center, who is our closer / second best pitcher. And we knew that was our last game of the week. So we were going to pitch him in relief. So he comes in, Dylan's in center field. They pinch run for the guy on first, excuse me. He steals second. It's 2 outs. I can't remember who was up to bat, but they obviously pinch run 1 out. Dylan's in center field. Kid hits a rocket. And of course it's high. It's winds blowing. It's like, you can still see that the snow is still sort of on the ground glistening and with the sun. So it's impossible to see it. And I'm like, okay, I trust Dylan. He's going to make the catch, but this kid's going to try and tag up to third. And I'm at third. Dylan's in the right center field gap, and an absolute laser on a 1-hop to me. And I got the ball. The kid's probably 5 feet from the bag getting ready to slide. And I can hear the coach just like slap his legs and everything. And it's just one of those situations. That's the game that I always remember, because 1, it snowed, and 2, we ended the game embarrassing this kid that was trying to tag up because Dylan threw
that ended the game. That double play ended the game?
That ended the game.
Awesome.
Yep, ended the game. And of course, tagged him out. And it was one of those big things that we celebrated. And I think that was our
Snow
first
angels everywhere.
Every year of the first conference game. Yeah, it was a wild game. And then
that is awesome.
Another one. The most fun I had probably playing baseball wasn't even high school. Like, I had a ton of fun, obviously, but was summer ball, I believe going into my sophomore year. And I played on this team, Dairy Queen. It was just a Legion team. And it was one of those teams that I knew players on the team, but obviously I was picked because I knew a couple of the people. And I was like, oh, this team's going to be good. And we just dominated everybody, because we had 2 kids on that team that went Division I, and 1 in football, 1 in basketball. So we were just a very athletic team. We had a couple of players that went JUCO for baseball, and we are a very, very good team. And it's funny that I find that to be the most fun I had, because the main position I played was catcher, and I'd never caught before in my life before that summer. And like, I only caught for 2 pitchers. And of course, when I didn't catch, I was a pitcher. So it felt like I was catching every single game. And it was crazy, because that was the most fun I thought I had, but I was playing a position I had never played before. When I thought at the beginning of the year, if I have to catch, I might quit. And I was like, it's just a very weird turn of events, because I really liked to get into catching. And then I ended up catching bullpens at certain points in high school, and we needed it. So it was a very weird summer.
The takeaway lesson there is, sometimes when you are taken out of your comfort zone, you end up finding that you have the most fun on the other side of that you've ever had in your life.
Absolutely.
Where are we right now, guys? Out of our comfort zone.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Good point. Luke, we appreciate you coming on with us, man.
Definitely.
Thanks. A lot of fun.
And Merry Christmas, by the way. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Always getting back to that. I don't think I'll ever live that one down.
Well, I'm glad you got a chance to be on Chris's podcast.
That's right. This is the Coaching Life with Pat Martin and Chris Stewart. That's what I'm going to start saying every episode from here on out. So,
I think Pat will like that.
Well, Luke, take care, buddy.
Thank you. You too.
All right, guys. We'll see you.